If you live in the UK, you need to take better control of your life, because the government can't be depended on to give you affordable energy, fresh drinking water, or even food security. If you're off-grid, it puts all that in your hands. The water you get through your tap is generally crap. You've got to put a filter on it. You really have to filter your own water. I mean, they found it's full of forever chemicals, and they have a go at your thyroid. They can cause cancer, fertility issues, immunity problems. These aren't little things. This needs to be sorted out. We need to have proper filtration in your water, and you should be advised, if not, to get certain filters on your tap before you drink your water. I can't believe this is not a national issue, really. I feel it's that bad. And you read online and they say, oh, it's very, it's good water, blah blah blah. And you read a little bit further and you go, well, it doesn't sound very good. Forever chemicals doesn't sound very good. But then again, look at the sewage that water companies are pumping into the rivers and streams. It's horrendous in this country. We've got raw sewage being pumped into them, and the Environment Agency have been quiet for years. I've never said anything. I just don't, they're an agency that are supposed to deal with this stuff. Someone's keeping quiet about things, and it's not right. If I pump shit into the river, I would be in the shit. So how have they got away with it? Thames Water, for instance, were privatised in 1989, and they didn't have any debt. And they're now in debt for 14.7 billion, I think it is. And they still paid their shareholders 10.4 billion, even though they're in that much debt. Now the consumer are going to have to pay that debt. They've not invested. They've not invested in quality of the water, and they've not invested in reservoirs and things like that. There's an actual reality that we could, in this country, if we have really dry summers, start to run out of water. Well, we do, don't we? We can't water loads of plants and stuff like that. There's a potential for that. It's absolutely ridiculous. Thankfully, technology's on our side to desalinate water, and I know in Dubai they're doing it, but we wouldn't move quick enough to do anything. It's just a terrible situation, really, where the consumer has been ripped off. And so we have our own water. We filter this water. Our filtration's so good, our water is really clean. We run it through an Itehil thing, and there's a video on Itehil. Fantastic device that really clears it, and I think you should be getting that at your tap. I mean, you can take it to really dirty sources. You can take it on holiday with you too, if you're camping and stuff like that. Excellent device to use. Everyone needs to get some sort of filtration system. Don't have to get the one I've just mentioned, but get something, for God's sake, that takes out these PFAS chemicals, because people are going to have problems. People are already having fertility problems, and it's no wonder why. Your food isn't much better, but your water's pretty damn awful. Our water bills are really cheap. I think we pay about £160 a year for filters. That's for a big UV filter and some of the smaller filters that go in stuff to take out bits, basically. Before it hits any UV, it's got to be really quite clean, down to like sort of 1 micron, because you don't want anything casting a shadow so the UV doesn't work. And we have really good water. And yet we still, at some points, get the Itehil out, because if we're drawing lots and lots from the pond, you get stuff that's even finer than that, and the Itehil takes it out to like 0.5 whatever it is parts per million, I think it is, really down low. Ours sits around, in the winter time it's around 25 parts per million, and it goes up to about 150 parts per million, which is still really good. My mum and dad's water was like 450 parts per million, around that sort of range, and let alone doing a test on all the chemicals that might be in it, it's a good thing to filter your water. So there's many reasons why we grow our own food, and why you perhaps should too, and that's one of them's forever chemicals, especially on the soft fruit. That was found to be high in the forever chemicals. Even though organic doesn't mean chemical free, it's still better. And that came across in a study that was done, and they found that non-organic strawberries and soft fruits had about 97% of them had forever chemicals on, and only 2% in the organic range had. So over the winter time, sometimes buy the old soft fruit. We try to stick to seasonally, but it can be difficult. You have birthdays and parties and stuff like that as a bit of a treat, and we buy the expensive organic stuff. And that gets me on to another thing. It's expensive. Food is ridiculously expensive. And it's not coming down to the farmer. The farmer has to earn a living. He's got lots of overheads. Everything is expensive for him as well. The feed and the energy in the big machinery and the big machinery itself is all expensive. The labour costs are expensive. But these places like Tesco's, your supermarket, are really taking the mickey. So in the time between 2023 and 2024, their profits went up from about 886 million to 2.3 billion. 160% increase in profits in just a year, when we're in a crisis, when they are telling farmers they can't pay them more for their eggs and milk. These big supermarkets are ripping people off. Due to net zero agendas, farmers are going to be really struggling. Not only are the likes of Tesco's taking the mick out of farmers and the consumer, since 2013 we've lost 1,000 dairy farms, and by 2050 we're set to lose 50% of meat and dairy. 50% of meat and dairy has got to go to meet net zero agendas. So what are we going to eat is the question. And the population is growing, although the native population isn't growing because we're importing a lot of people. But they need feeding, and obviously the people that are here need feeding. So we do have to have more farms if we are going to have some sort of food independence. And the government does not seem interested in that at all. So we didn't just end up with this. We didn't just end up with a polytunnel. We weren't just given a load of money to go and buy this. We started very small. We started with a very small mortgage for a very small bungalow, like one of the cheapest places in the area. And we grew a little bit of food there. And then we actually bought that place because the guy wanted to sell it. And then we grew a little bit more food. And then we moved down here and we sold that place, and we managed to get a polytunnel with the money and things like that. So now we grow more food, and we grow enough through the summer to be completely, so we don't have to buy vegetables basically, or fruit, unless we want a punnet of grapes or something like that. We don't have to, and I'd like to get a grapevine, but it's all a process. Start off small. This year it's probably going to be one of our best years we've had, because I've put a bit more time and effort into it. I haven't been doing a larger project this year. Obviously it does take time. It takes initial investment, but then your food bill does go down. I guess it pays for itself fairly quickly actually. I haven't done the numbers because quite honestly I haven't had time to think about it, and it's not even about necessarily saving money all the time. Sometimes it's just about eating quality stuff. So we know where it's come from, we know what we're feeding the plants, we know where the soil has come from because we're actually growing the soil here. It's wood chip and things like that, and we've got chickens and the manure goes in there, and it's sort of self-sustaining eventually. So what are they expecting us to eat? When they get rid of 50% of meat and dairy, what's the go-to? And by the looks of it, it's going to be this idea of bugs, because there's this big factory called Unsect that's set up in France that's producing bugs for human consumption. The meat industry is turning into lab grown, and if people believe in that, believe that we have a real CO2 crisis that's out of hand because of man, they'll allow the sky to be blotted out, and they'll allow everything to be lab grown because of fear. And what a sorry state we'll be in if those idiots succeed in scaring the rest of us. On Easter Sunday we had a load of meat birds hatch out. We've got 20 meat birds, 3 of which hatched under some hens that were broody. Grace says Rudy, but they were broody. And now we've got some that we put in the incubator. We've got 17 in here, and then they obviously, when they get a bit bigger, they'll go outside into a bigger pen. So they're all Labresse cross with an Orpington or pure Labresse, and some of the colours are quite amazing really, considering they were supposed to be you know, half Labresse. But look, there's no other cockerel, so I don't know how I managed it. And we know which eggs are which. There might be some full Orpington, because the Orpington lays an egg fairly similar sometimes to the French Labresse. Sometimes they range from white to like a sort of off-white. So, but they're all meaty, nice tasting birds. And this might put you off now, chicken, because these are fairly cute. They're lucky birds because they've got 5 months now of life, and that's the way I see it. They're not a 12-week quick job or less. So they go out on the grass and they're eating insects and they're eating the grass and the weeds in the lawn area, and I bring rotted wood chip in, and there's all worms and stuff in that and insects for them to eat, and they scatter that all around and they just basically push it around the grass and make the grass go better and greener, and it helps you out. Them doing all that work, kicking it around for you is great, and we are getting nicer, greener grass for it. So it might lead on to something like some sheep or some pigs or something. So we pay international energy prices on oil and gas. And oil and gas has been set, so people should be able to get the same sort of price for oil and gas energy as they get in the rest of Europe. But we're not, because our government, through the levies and various taxes, put 78% tax on it. They're all ripping us off, basically. And this is why you need to be off-grid. At least you have some control over that. 78% tax. So when you're struggling to pay for your heating, just remember that. And also you're paying for the green stuff that's switched off because it's been designed badly. We have our own solar panels and we have some big batteries that store that energy. And we designed how many batteries do we need to withstand like a few days if we had no sun, and sort of match that to how many solar panels that we had on the barn roof. So the government didn't do that. When they have too much solar, they can't cope. There's nowhere to put the extra solar power when it's a really sunny day, when we actually get a sunny day. So it isn't a system that's designed very well, because then it costs the consumer for them to basically not produce energy. Energy producers get paid whether they're producing energy or not, because there's not a system there to store it, and they call it solar clipping. Wind turbines, they have to curtail that as well because it can't cope. There's nowhere to put it all. There's no storage backup. So the consumer, that's right, the consumer has to pay when they are switched off. They make up the difference. So you make up the difference if you are on the grid and you're getting green energy, or any sort of energy in this country. You are making up the difference, and it was 1.3 billion in 2024 to have them switched off. How is green energy ever going to be cheap? And this is what they keep saying, green energy is going to be cheap. It isn't going to be cheap. But then we've got another thing that's a kick in the teeth, haven't we? The government are going to sign a thing where they're allowing, because of climate change, to block out the sun. We knew they'd already been spraying the skies with stuff. So they're curtailing their own solar because they're going to block out the sun. So maybe that's their way around it. We don't need storage batteries. We're blocking the sun out anyway. You're not going to have any extra power. It doesn't need blocking out. There's nothing wrong. They know the climate's it's a sham. It's a complete sham. And now are we going to get climate people go, but we need to block the sun out. It's just too hot. Look, more people die of the cold in Europe. A lot more people. There's some stats come out about that, and not even like less than a quarter it's die because of heat. Most of them die because they're cold, because they can't afford to put the bloody heating on. So when they give you the old "it's for safety," when they don't give a shit whether you're cold or not, you know it's not for safety. You know it's not for you. So what's it for? Just getting the rays while they're still here. So it looks like we're going to be going through like the dark ages, brought to you in the guise of safety. So people might be looking at what I'm saying and saying, but our lives have never been better. We've never had such good lives, you know, we don't go hungry, and we get to do what we want to do generally, and we get to go on holiday and everything like that. I remember I had a customer a few years ago, and I said to her, I said, we're slaves really, aren't we? You know, when you can't afford to do certain things, if you're working all the time and you still can't afford to get on, it feels a bit like slavery. And she said, well, no, we're not slaves, really. She said, wage slaves maybe. And I said, but wages are your energy and time, and energy and time is your life. And I was thinking, people don't really get it, do they? They don't really understand that that's what it is. I mean, you've got people that have got a 30-year mortgage or a longer mortgage than that, or they don't get on the ladder because they're at university and they're putting off having kids and all those things to get the best job that they can to get on in life, to pay for generally the house. What are they living for? They're paying for the property, and yes, they'll be able to sell it eventually. They'll be able to perhaps leave it to their kids. That's if there isn't a crash, it doesn't go wrong. So if everything goes right in all that time that you pay for that house, you might be able to pass it on. And it's hope, isn't it? That's a lot of putting on hope that things are all right, there isn't a big crash. And if population doesn't grow, we're going to have a lot of houses that aren't being lived in. If we do, our native population isn't growing. Immigration is growing massively, but we aren't growing. And when does it all start to slow down? There is going to be a point where you go, well, is it worth it? Putting all that money in, that your whole life on property. And if you're earning big time, then it doesn't feel like it's slavery, does it? If you're earning loads of money. But a lot of people now, especially when they have kids, and this is why people are having less kids, affordability of having children. So when they can't afford food and they're struggling with the mortgage and all the other bits and pieces, and they're not really doing it, not having a holiday, are they a slave? How close are they getting to slave? What degree do you call it is slavery? Some people like to call this system the matrix. The trouble is, I don't like that idea. I don't like using that definition of what we have as the matrix. I understand it completely, what people mean by the matrix. But the Matrix was a 20-year-old sci-fi that was an AI intelligence that used us as batteries. And what we have right now is a form of slavery, but it's very real. And it's just getting people to that level to understand, whereabouts are you in the spectrum of slave? Where do you see yourself? Are you affording to do what with your time and energy? And the trouble is, we're all in a system, and it's a financial system that holds everything really together. The financial system is the biggie. And so when you get people say you can be outside the system, non-reliant on the system, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to billy bullshit people and say you just grow all your own food and do all that, because you can't just be out the system. And I know this because the Amish have been doing this for hundreds of years, and they are parallel to the system. It may look like they're completely out the system, but they still go back to money. And there was a comedian called George Carling, and he basically used to say, you have owners, you are owned.
They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls.
So when people say, get out of the system, there's a couple of ways of getting out of the system. And one is to build a business and become a millionaire, and that way you can be higher up in that degree in terms of where you are as a slave. Or you can buy some land, and you've got a little bit more sticking power, really, because if you want to say I don't want to go into work today, I'm striking, I haven't got a mortgage and I've got my own food, and I can live for weeks, months, years on what I've stored, and there's nothing you can do about it. The government aren't going to like that. They've got nothing there to control you other than the threat of violence and perhaps putting you in prison to try and find something that you've done illegal. So the option of not being rich is buy land, owe nothing, and be free, which is a bit different from the you will own nothing and you will be happy, which is what the WF says. And they do say a lot of things. I mean, they've got Yuval Harari, who is saying that in the future, when AI is taking more of our jobs, we could have augmented brain chips to give us AI type abilities, so we can work more efficiently, and we'll basically be able to be much better than a normal human. And these normal people, is what he said, these normal people that haven't had this augmented brain chip will be known as useless humans.
And then the big political and economic question of the 21st century will be, what do we need humans for? Or at least, what do we need so many humans for? At present, the best guess we have is keep them happy with drugs and computer games.
That's what they think. That's what you will be a bird. Not that you would be able to, you know, live in nature or grow a garden or, you know, produce some food or just have some sort of happy life. You are there solely as a means of purpose to them. Right, you've got no other meaning, is what that suggests to me. What other meaning have you got if you can't do what you're supposed to do? We're just going to put you in the small box. People like Yuval Harari and the other Bond villains in the WEF have made their position really clear. But you've got to listen. And if you listen hard enough, they will tell you their bad intentions. Are you listening?